In this review session, I'm going to try and give you an argument as to why the Industrial Revolution occurs in England. It's helpful in this regard to sort of use England as a case study where the Industrial Revolution first occurred, as to exploring why does this Industrial Revolution happen. Some of you might be asking, well, why wasn't the Industrial Revolution occurring in 1500? Why did we have to wait till the 1740s, the 1750s? Well, the first element is the agricultural revolution. We talked about its importance in terms of the development of food production, but it carries another unintended consequence, which is why I feature this abandoned farm in England. Because as you had the growth of the enclosure movement and the growth of farming as a commercial venture, family farms found that they could not compete. And so what this meant was that farms and farming families started to be pushed out of an occupation that they had known as what they were for centuries. And thus this led to the question of, well, where to now? Well, most of them realized that the only outlet for them is to go to the cities, go to these growing factories, and they can find work there. And so as food production increases, or rather as the agricultural revolution occurs, you have two outcomes. The first is an increase in food production, but also an increase in available workers for the factories as farmers get pushed away from their family farms and towards the city. Now this carries an unintended consequence that also promotes the growth of the Industrial Revolution. Because as they're all being pushed into the cities, they're looking for, naturally in the climate of England, for heat for their homes. The problem is so many people were turning towards the cities that they were threatening to deforest England. Wood was not a suitable or usable source for heat for most of these people. And so people started to turn towards a new fuel source. What is it that we can use to heat our homes? Well, many of them start to turn towards coal. And here you can see again sort of this feedback loop. As Watt invents his steam engine, which makes coal a ready use for factories, people are already having an incentive to turn towards coal to try and develop means to extract coal and transport coal simply to heat their homes. And so you get a feedback loop as more and more people are turning towards coal, which means it's more easily and readily used when factories start to shift to steam power. Now, another reason that England turned to coal is a little bit of geographical happenstance. England is covered in sort of its northern and western sections with coal fields. And so this meant that as England was turning towards coal, they benefited from the fact that they had an abundance of coal in England. Now this is not a sort of geography dictates history argument, but it's important to see how all of these interrelated elements come together to produce a situation where people are incentivized to seek after these new machines, new methods of power, and find them useful. And so what you should see is take all these elements, take all these changes, and overlay them on some of the natural benefits that England has already had up till this point. They benefit from a large empire in which they have access to raw materials, that as they're producing more goods, they have ready markets to sell them. And what you can see is England is particularly well positioned to enable them to achieve the Industrial Revolution, and that's why it occurs first in England and then spreads to the rest of the world.